The Pelicans' win over the Sacramento Kings proved one thing clearly. This isn't a bad team. They might not be good. They're definitely flawed, but bad teams don't win games like that. That matters. It's Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with you on this Tuesday, day after the Pelicans win the Tanking Bowl, bigger than the Super Bowl, according to some on TikTok. 120-94, a win over the Sacramento Kings. It proved one thing. This is not a bad team. Flawed, not good, certainly, but not a bad team. And that actually matters. And I'll explain in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. If you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. You can also watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every weekday at 10:30 a.m. So we're going to get into the Pelicans win 120-94. It feels good to say over the Sacramento Kings because I do think this win proves they are not a bad team. We'll then look at Jeremiah Fears, how he played in this one, but also the uncomfortable situation it does put the Pelicans in. I feel very confident. I watched a ton of film on the Pelicans on Monday. I'm planning out a show that I'll likely use during the All-Star break about how the Pelicans have grown under James Borrego. What's different from earlier in the year when they were playing under head coach Willie Green? And that's not to say that Borrego is the guy who should get the job or anything like that. It's just you can see this team is better than they were at the start of the year, and I'll explain why. So I've rewatched every game basically under Borrego in condensed form over the past day or two, and you see some things that really jump out at you. So I feel very confident saying the Pelicans are not a bad team. Yeah, we even talked about it in yesterday's show where there's going to be teams that are going to be outright tanking in just horrific ways. You look at the Sacramento Kings, they are a bad team. Earlier in the season, the Pelicans could have lost to a team like this. They could have lost to this bad of a Sacramento Kings team, and in fact, they had losses like that. And those losses will still creep up here and there. This team is not good, I would say. So you will have horrific losses. The Bucks loss is, I think, a good example of one here. But earlier in the season, the Pelicans easily could have lost this game. And look, it's the Kings. That context does matter here. But you not only beat them, you absolutely blew them out. This was not a close win. This was not a clutch game. This was a game where the Pelicans just raced out to a lead and never looked back and never took their foot off the gas. When you see James Borrego finding certain lineups and roles for guys that are working, you can see that there is talent here. It also helps that some guys are playing exceptionally well on offense. You look at Zion Williamson and his night, and we'll look at that when we're talking about why the team looks different than they did earlier in the year, but 18 points on 11 shot attempts. When he started getting going and getting downhill, it was just easy work for him. 5 rebounds, 6 assists. He's playing, at least offensively, at a very, very high level. Trey Murphy is too. He can't miss, it feels like right now. 21 points on the night, 5 of 11 from 3, but you also saw him playmaking a little bit more, using his court gravity, kind of showing off the range of his game in this one. Again, it helps that you're playing a bad team, don't get me wrong, but earlier in the year, we wouldn't have seen something like that. Earlier in the year, even a couple weeks ago, we might not have seen this team survive only a 12-point game from Saddiq Bey, who did not have the best shooting night overall. But now, all of a sudden, with guys kind of playing at a better level, you start to see that. When you have a game where Carlo Makovic can be really impactful off the bench, 12 points in under 20 minutes of action along with 9 rebounds, you go, okay, Jeremiah Fears, 20 points. We'll focus on him and Derik Queen and some of the other young guys in the next segment here, but you see them kind of growing a little bit too. There are some things kind of falling in place. Beating bad teams is a sign of often a good team, but I'm not going to go that far with this Pelicans squad. You've got to beat teams worse than you. All the top teams do it. Look at like the Oklahoma City Thunder, who for the most part are just kind of running roughshod over the league. Same with the Pistons and even like the Boston Celtics, I think too, are all teams that are like beating teams they are supposed to beat. The Pelicans in this one were 9.5-point favorites, which is wild to think about per FanDuel. And they took care of business. They more than took care of business. That says at least something about this team, that they are not bad. And that's at least encouraging. It's going to put them in a weird spot, and we'll talk about that in the third segment. But right now, the way this year has gone, not being bad feels like a massive thing here. You know, they beat the Memphis Grizzlies twice. That's a bad team. They've gotten a win here and there over good teams. You know, recently, last game, over the Minnesota Timberwolves. You know, they've beaten the San Antonio Spurs. Okay, like you feel a little bit better about the squad. There's still moments where you're like, oh, yeah, no. Philly wasn't great. Neither was the loss to Charlotte, even though Charlotte's hot, but you blew a 22-point lead and then you still lost by 7. That's not great. You know, as recently as last month, they were getting blown out by bad teams, so you don't like to see that. But they're starting to at least put some stuff together, it feels like. And at least that's better than they were before. For when this team starts to reload and try and make a playoff push next year. And I don't think there's any chance that they're going to be able to get into the play-in tournament this year. They might get close, but I don't think they're going to end up getting in. You even see a team like the Utah Jazz who just beat the Miami Heat because they have some good players that are going to want to win games, and that's going to be a little bit of a problem here. So you have those type of teams and games, and so that is going to be a situation where, you know, they're still not a playoff team. You're going to end up with a lot of hope. This is something I went into in yesterday's show talking about the tanking teams, that it's still going to be a little bit tough to evaluate them. You're going to see them play some bad teams, and this squad will win those games, and you don't want to kind of get lulled into fool's gold. But I feel confident if we're looking to kind of judge this team, they're not horrific, at least anymore. They definitely were, but they've improved. Zion is playing really, really good basketball. He's readily available right now. The rookies are making strides at times. It's still a little bit of an up and down thing, but you can see the progress from a lot of these guys. That's what you're looking for, I think, right now. And it's somewhat encouraging. You want a positive show? Here you go. Not a bad team, Pelicans. Flood, they still are going to need some help with rebounding. You know, the Sacramento Kings had 19 rebounds in this one. Offensive board, sorry, I should say. Like, that's not going to work. You're absolutely going to need to deal with that. The Pelicans gave up too many points in the paint as a result of that, and some really, really lax defense from this squad. They're still very much a work in progress in that area. I don't care that the Kings didn't score in this one at all. That's more of the Kings. The defense was not great from New Orleans, but you also do see them forcing turnovers, getting out and running. They had 34 points in fast break opportunities in this one because they forced turnovers, and they've been really good at converting those turnovers into points in fast break opportunities. When you have a man advantage like that, it's really easy to score. You don't need a good half court offense then. 29 points off of the turnovers for Sacramento because New Orleans was going out and running. You regularly saw it in this game. They were just pushing the ball ahead. They were trying to get into even semi-transition opportunities of let's just get out and run regularly, basically every single possession, because they realized Sacramento can't defend at all. And when you get the shooting from a Trey Murphy, from a Jeremiah Fears who shot well in this one, that's where things really start to come together and you can blow out a bad team. Bad teams don't blow out other bad teams. I think I feel very confident in saying New Orleans is not bad. Not good, flawed, but not bad. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. Coming up next, let's look at Bryce McGowan's, Jeremiah Fears, some of the other young guys on this team who are all developing, improving. It's been encouraging to see. I want to break down some of their games. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by ZocDoc. Finding a doctor you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. Sure, you want someone who's in-network, nearby, and has availability, but you also want a doctor who listens, makes you feel comfortable, and explains things clearly. That kind of doctor exists, and finding them is pretty easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone you love without the hassle. So we're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states, covering over 200 specialties, from primary care to dentistry to dermatology and eye care. If you've been putting off doctor appointments, I'm kind of guilty of that. Work, life, all that, it's easy to get delayed, but ZocDoc's going to make the process simple. You can search by specialty or symptoms and actually build a care team that works for you. And you can see real-time availability and book instantly. No phone calls, no waiting on hold. So whether you want to go in person, do a video visit, ZocDoc makes it easy either way. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by Wayfair. The new year is here, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you may as well love how it looks and feels. And that's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh, all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and budget. I also love that shipping is easy, delivery is smooth, and everything's going to arrive as expected. You don't have a truck. You're not going to go carry all that stuff around. Make Wayfair do the hard work for you. It's going to make getting back into a routine this new year feel a whole lot more manageable. So get organized, refreshed, and back on track this new year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well, and become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're all about that everydayer life, go check out the new Everydayer Club. You're going to get access to ad-free audio for Locked On Pelicans, which is compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every other major podcast app. You're going to get an invite into the members-only Locked On Everydayer Discord server, which includes a group chat just for Locked On Pelicans listeners, but also our national shows, our national chat as well. You can find the link in the show notes if you want to learn more. So the Pelicans blew out the Sacramento Kings. Again, I feel pretty comfortable saying they are not a terrible team. They are not a bad team. They're not good. They are flawed. I don't view them as a playoff team. Next year, I don't view them as a playoff team with where they're going to kind of fall. That's something we'll look at in the offseason here. But they're not a bad team. And that's going to put them in an uncomfortable spot. I'll talk about that next. But you know what? Let's just be happy for a minute. And one guy that I want to highlight in this game, which I thought was an awesome performance, is Jeremiah Fears. 20 points on the night. 8 of 14 from the field, 2 of 4 from deep. He had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 3 turnovers, 4 fouls. He was really good in this game. And when you look at him in this one, you could feel the impact, right? His plus minus was a plus 26 on the night. That's the highest on the team. That's great. But he's playing against bench guys, right? So does it matter as much? Nah, when you look at his shooting and what he's doing, you can see actual growth from him. He's finishing around the rim better. We saw him struggle to finish around the rim when nobody was at the rim at times. So for him to come out and shoot a whole lot better than he is, I think that's where you look at him and you go, oh, okay, you can definitely see some growth. What's also, I think, been pretty impressive is what he's been doing on the defensive side of the ball. The shot may come and go. That he only scored 2 points against Minnesota. He was not good scoring the ball in that game, but he had the block. He also has at least like 2 steals over the last handful of games, minus Milwaukee and Minnesota. But before that, against Charlotte, against Philly, against Memphis, 2 steals in each of those games. He's finding ways to contribute, I think. And if he can do that on the defensive side of the ball, that's going to be really important to his growth. This is going to be a player that, if you're doing that, you've got to keep him out there on the court. He's a little undersized, not extremely, but a little undersized. You need to make an impact defensively. That's going to be the number one thing for a player like that. We're seeing what that's done to someone like Trey Young, what it's doing to Ja Morant and their trade value, and how nobody really wants those guys. And a lot of it is because of their issues on the defensive side of the ball. But Jeremiah Fears fighting his best through screens, switching and handling bigger assignments at times, and trying to poke the ball loose and get out in transition, that's going to work. You don't always see Trey Young doing that. You don't see Ja Morant doing that sort of thing. You see Jeremiah Fears competing on the defensive side of the ball. That's been, I think, is going to be really big for him. It's going to mean no matter what happens, what this team does, and we'll get into that in the next segment, you're going to have to play him minutes, and he's going to find time out there on the court. And as the three-point shot starts to fall a little bit more, he's still inconsistent with it, but look, 3 of 4 against Milwaukee, 2 of 4 in this one, 50% against Charlotte, 1 of 2, 2 of 4 against Philly. He's showing the talent to do it, and he's not scared to take that shot. And for a team that is going to need to take more threes, and they took 39 in this game, him taking 4, whether he's starting or coming off the bench, is going to be a really big thing for him. That's how you fit into this team that's gone a little bit more egalitarian when it comes to the offense, and not as, they're still very, but not as Zion-centric as they used to be. That's something we will look at when I kind of break down the differences in the team right now. But Jeremiah Fears being able to kind of work a little bit more off ball at times, I think, is the type of thing that's going to go a really long way for him in his career here and how he kind of fits into this team. So that was a really great performance from him in this one. Derik Queen also showed a couple things, has been showing a lot, obviously, that I really liked and I wanted to kind of highlight in this one. You see just how skilled of a big man he is. The way he kind of dances out there on the court, the footwork he has is at times a little unconventional, but it is largely effective. You see him with a variety of spin moves, dribble moves to just find a way to get to the basket. When he gets isolated one-on-one, he's like, all right, like, I got you. I'm going to take you to the rim. And he's been doing that. You saw that in this game here too. Didn't have the 3-point shot like he did against Minnesota. Only took 1, missed it, although it wasn't great, but it wasn't horrific. Only 8 points on the night. You know, you had Maxime Reynaud, who's just rebounding basically everything, it felt like, in this one for the Sacramento Kings, and they were really attacking the offensive glass. So I think Queen at times, still not being an elite rebounder, hurts him out there, and it's going to limit some of the minutes that he can play because the team wants to win these games. But you see the offensive game looking really good. What constantly impresses me about him is the way he can get out in transition and run. You saw him poke the ball. He had 3 steals in this game. Poke the ball loose on the perimeter. When he's out there, he's doing a pretty decent job. And he's going to get out there, he's going to poke the ball loose, and then he can just run and take it himself, which he did early on in this one. This is a team that wants to run, that wants to play with pace, more possessions. Getting out in transition, running, forcing turnovers is the best way to do that. You've seen them do that under James Borrego, and Derik Queen is kind of that mobile, at times big, really fits into that, both offensively and defensively, what you want to see here. Messi does too. You know, one game after where he was switched onto Anthony Edwards and did a tremendous job of stopping him twice, right? Basically on that final possession, Messi comes out and shows a lot, right? He's been defending on the perimeter better. He's starting to develop a little bit of an offensive bag, I think, and a couple of different moves out there. And you saw him look pretty good in this one. Again, he doesn't rebound as well as you would like, but neither of the bigs particularly do, because, thank you, Tyler, they're often on the perimeter because of the switching scheme. And I think that's a show we're going to do here of like, do the Pelicans need to abandon that if they roll with these bigs? Because you need to be able to rebound a little bit better. And if you're putting your bigs on the perimeter, it's going to make it tough. And teams realize this, right? And that's something that they're attacking a lot on this team. But for the most part, they're kind of finding a way. At least they can defend out there. It's bad if you were defending and being poor at that and then also giving up offensive boards. You also have Bryce McGowan's just kind of, again, he's been really key for this team. There's a reason why they wanted to free up a roster spot for him. You know, limited minutes in this one, 24 minutes, but 8 points, 3 of 7. He was 2 of 3 from deep. You saw that shot falling also and kind of being ready for it. against the Minnesota Timberwolves as well. That's what I like to see from him. He's just a guy that goes out there and really competes. They're very, very high on him. They're extremely excited about him. I don't know when they'll do the signing. They only have about $1 million to play with in terms of the luxury tax, so that's something to keep in mind with it. But they feel pretty good about him. These are all young guys that, in theory, are part of your core going forward. Guys that are going to be with your team for a while because they're so young. Feels like you can really build around something like that. But that's what makes this game, and saying the Pelicans aren't bad but not good, a weird situation. There's an uncomfortable middle ground in the NBA, and the Pelicans 1,000% need to do everything they can to avoid that. I'll tell you why. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. And they're going to handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. So you just upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate. Get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. And of course, make Locked On Saints your second listen today. Ross Jackson, who I'll see this week a couple of times, covering everything black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast. Make Locked On Saints your second to listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. So there is an area, and we again talked about this a little bit yesterday, called like NBA limbo. It's this uncomfortable middle ground where you're not bad enough to bottom out. You're not rebuilding. You're not tanking. You're trying to win games, but you are not good enough to really be a true title contender. And the way I view a true title contender is a Final Four team, a conference finals. The Final Four teams, right? Those are the ones that had a chance to go to the finals. So it means winning 2 rounds of the playoffs. The Pelicans, even with their current roster, unless they get their defensive issues really figured out, I struggle to see them kind of entering that territory. Could they get into the playoffs? Yes. Do I see them above a number of teams in the Western Conference where they're a top 6 seed? Not really, right? Like over the next couple of years, they're not going to be better than OKC. They're not going to be better than the Spurs. They're not going to be better than Denver. They're not going to be better than Houston. They're not going to be better than Minnesota. That's 5 teams. You know, the Lakers are going to be in that mix. Phoenix might be in that mix. Who knows what Golden State is going to do? You know, you have Portland who's trying to come up and be good. You're going to have teams like Sacramento, Utah, and Memphis all tanking. Dallas is going to try and be competitive next year because they don't own their picks after that. I struggled. That puts the Pelicans firmly in play-in tournament territory. And yeah, you can get into the postseason that way. And you can end up with the 14th overall pick. The 14th overall pick last time they had it was Jordan Hawkins. And we see that that's not much of a difference maker kind of player. So when you kind of enter that territory of like forever at the end of the lottery, you're not going to get the difference makers, which are largely in the top 5 of the draft. And we did a show on this, and you should listen to it if you haven't, about where you get like game-changing players. And it's largely in the top 5, almost certainly compared to elsewhere. There are outliers. I get it. But that's largely where it is going to go. So if you don't get out of that if you stay in that middle ground, you're kind of stuck there. Yeah, you'll keep drafting guys and you're competitive enough, so you're not going to bottom out and tank, and you'll keep going for it, but you'll never get over that hump, and you just get stuck in this uncomfortable middle ground in the NBA. This is why when I've talked about blowing it up, not tanking, but just rebuilding around these young guys, trading off your good players for pieces, for parts and picks and all that, I want to avoid that middle ground. And I think there are people who want the middle ground, right? The front office, the team clearly does. They want a couple of playoff revenue games and people to be caring about the team all season long, not just for the beginning part and then it all tapering off and fading out. Look, getting into the playoffs 3 years in a row would just be really fun, even if you're losing in the first round. I totally get it. I've even made that claim for it before. I just see with some of these young guys who are just kind of growing before our eyes, something that I think is sustainable in a way that I haven't seen before from this team. And I think, to me, that's how you are going to become, that's how you have the best chance of becoming one of those Final Four teams. If you keep this kind of roster the same, you can probably get into the play-in tournament, the playoffs next year, but you won't be a Final Four team. I could see them being a Final Four team with a team that's solely built around Fears and Queen and using those draft picks in the future for various things. Because look, you're going to lose Trey Murphy, you're going to lose Herb Jones because they're going to get priced out with the way the salary cap works. So, you might not even get there even with those guys. So that's kind of the way I see it. But if the Pelicans kind of feel that they're not bad, that they're competitive enough, look, you can kind of push your chips in and go for it. And I wonder if that's what they're going to end up doing this offseason. I think this is a way where, they're going to look at this and be like, we could add a Ja Morant. It's a supercharged version of Jeremiah Fears, at least offensively. They might be able to find another center, a Jarrett Allen in the offseason that you add to this, bring Queen off the bench. What would that look like? If you're going to go for it, you should go for it, but you can't do it by just being in the middle. It can't be just adding like a DeJounte Murray kind of player. That's good, but not going to really elevate you to title contention. You really need to go for it. And I'm going to be really curious to see how this end of the season, where we determine now the Pelicans are not bad, not good, but not bad, flawed, if they just make a big swing to try and fix one of the multiple flaws on this team and what that could do for them. It's going to be interesting to see and where this team's going to end up at the end of the season and how different it could look at the start of next season. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Be back with y'all tomorrow.